confused about your child's reading level based on universal screener data, I'll explain. This is Dr. Emily Sherwood. If you're interested in literacy and in education topics, please like and subscribe. So almost every parent has gone through this. You get a lot of paperwork from the school. If your kid gets it home, sometimes it gets lost in a backpack or it's left on the bus or in a locker, but if the child brings your work home, you get all these reports about test data, and it's incredibly confusing. There's all these numbers on it, and all these percentages, and all these classifications, and it's just really confusing to know what it means. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, because test data is something that parents should know how to use and have it be helpful. So in the United States, almost every school has what's called a universal screener. Every public school in the United States has one of these, and many private schools also have them now. I know when I worked overseas, we had a universal screener, and the idea of this started about 15 years ago with what is called response to intervention, or RTI. So the whole idea of a universal screener is that every child takes a test. It's usually on a computer now, because that's easy to do and easy to score. And that test gives your child a score. And based on that score, the school determines who needs extra help and who is doing well, and it also determines student growth. So they look at, did the student grow? And if the student did not grow, or the student even went down, which unfortunately I've seen a lot, then that child may need extra intervention, or the school may need to do something different to help that child. And if you see it in a whole classroom or a whole grade level or the whole school, then something needs to change with the school. So universal screeners, there's a number of them. And most of the ones that are popular, that are used a lot, are iReady, MAP, Star Literacy, and CBN. But there are others out there, and they all have the same purpose, and they're all kind of designed the same. They give your child questions, and depending how the child does on the question, the computer may give a harder question or easier question, and ultimately what it does is it finds two things. It finds a raw score, and in most cases it finds a reading level. Now MAP is an exception to this. It just gives a raw score, which is called RIT, or RIT. And in that case you have to use a conversion. So ultimately you get a score that shows your child's reading level. Now again, this may vary based on the test. Sometimes it shows a Lexile level, especially for older children. Many of the tests will show what's called a Lexile level. And sometimes it gives a reading level, which may be called ATOS, ATOS, or it may be called GE, which means general equivalency. And that is the level that your child is on in reading. So for example, if your child's reading level is 1.5, that means that compared to other students in the United States, your child reads at about where a first grader would read halfway through the school year. And the test is given usually 3 times a year at least. Sometimes it's given more, but there's always a fall, winter, and spring. If your child is found to need intervention, it may be given more often. So that because of what we call progress monitoring, which is that you're seeing how the children are responding to the intervention and if it's working. And ultimately, using this test and other data, particularly teacher data, other standardized test data, if your child continues to struggle, your child may be referred for special education services. Again, this really varies by state. South Carolina really doesn't use RTI at all, which is very unfortunate, and Tennessee uses it a lot. But this is one of the data points that can be used if your child starts to struggle for special education. It's also one of the data points that may be used for gifted education or for making educational placement decisions. It should not be the only data point. There should be preferably at least 3 data points, 3 different tests, 3 different measures that show how your child's doing. But in reading, based on your child's reading level, your child may get a color. Now this is incredibly confusing. This is true with most of the tests. Some of the tests don't do colors, but most of them now do colors. And this is really confusing, especially for people from other cultures. You think of a red light. You have red, which means stop, there's a problem. You have yellow, which means there might be a problem, but maybe not, and things are okay. Green is good. Green means you can go, you can move forward. And then the MAP test and some other tests have blue, which is advanced, which is good. Blue is the best. And so using this information, schools will often make information an intervention. So as a parent, the main thing that you need to know is that if your child is red or yellow, that means there might be a reading problem. If your child is green or blue, your child is doing well, and there's probably not a reading problem. Culturally, this is hard for some people. I know when I taught in China, a lot of parents are really confused because in China, red is good. So I also want to clear up a few myths about universal screeners. And the first one is that they're always right. The test is one piece of information. It is not always accurate. Children don't like to take tests, and many times they want to go play in the playground, or they want to be with their friends. They might have anxiety. If they're really little, they may not know how to use a computer, or if you're from a culture and a background where you haven't used a computer much, that's really common among English learners. You may not take the test correctly. Unfortunately, a lot of schools are now into what's called fidelity, which means that there are very strict conditions where you take the test. In other words, they don't want for you to retake the test, and they don't want for you to take the test in a different setting. Everybody has to take it together. Most of these tests are what we call secure now, which means that it's like an end of the year test. And what you get, you get. However, if your child is in trouble and you have other information that shows that maybe they're not, I would question that. And I would also ask the school if it is possible to retake the test. Some schools still allow that, but some schools don't. And the test is just one indicator. There should be at least, like I said, there should be multiple indicators before you do something drastic, like refer a child for special education. But unfortunately, states do have a lot of rules, and sometimes the rules say that this test is the only test that matters, which again is unfortunate. It's not fair to children. And another option is if your child doesn't seem to do well on a computer, ask the teacher if it's possible to get a running record. That's where the child can read a text out loud and answer questions. That's generally the most accurate data we have. And I would ask for that before, again, doing something drastic. That takes up a lot of time and energy, so it's quite possible that there's not somebody who can do that, honestly. If you have the funds, you may consider doing that with like a literacy specialist. Somebody like me could help with that. But that is the most accurate thing that we have as far as testing. Another myth is that this test somehow counts for a grade. I know every time that I gave any kind of a standardized test in school, the students were like, oh, is this a grade? Because unfortunately, the United States is now very grade driven, and there's a lot of controversy about grades, and students worry about grades, and they take it more seriously. Generally speaking, universal screeners are never graded as far as being part of a student's grade. Now, there are cases where an end of the year test, such as the TCAP, the Tennessee Comprehensive Assessment of Progress, which is the end of the year state test, that goes for a portion of the grade. Tests like iReady, tests like Easy CBM or MAP or STAR, those do not go towards the student grade. So, and also, I really want to reiterate again, I've said this in the previous videos, but a reading level can change drastically because of what you're reading. So if you're reading something that the student is very familiar with, the student may be able to do a higher level, and if it's something the student doesn't know anything about, it may need to go lower. And so that's another myth, is that these tests give an exact reading level that shouldn't go out of that. So yeah, that's kind of the information about reading levels and universal screeners. And I know I went through this really quickly. If you have any questions, concerns, if you want to consult with me, I'm happy to talk to you. My first meeting's free of charge, and you can message me. I'll also put my email in the description box. And and if you, for whatever reason, don't have access to a universal screener, I'm thinking especially if families at homeschool may not have access to this, or if your child goes to a private school. The best one I can recommend is Easy CBM. I'm not paid by them. I don't get any money for saying that. But it's very user-friendly, and easy to use, and it has a free trial for 30 days, which you can give your child an assessment during that time. And then if you decide that you want to continue doing assessments on your child, it's only $49.99 a year. So it's not a huge investment, and it gives you a pretty good idea of what's going on with your child. And again, it's very, very user-friendly, even if you don't have any kind of background in education. My next video, I'm going to discuss some of the tools that can help you to find books that are right for your children. This is something I hear a lot, is my child hates reading, or I can't find any books my child's interested in, or my child reads at such a low grade level that it's hard to find a book at their maturity level, or my child's a really good reader, but my child's in the first grade reading at a sixth grade level, and we can't find anything that is appropriate. I'm going to go over some tools, and I'll do that in the next video. So thank you so much. Have a great day and keep learning.